We have chartered a deep-sea-going boat. No luxurious ocean liner, this. Just a pearling schooner. But that's about all you'll find in these waters. And after all, what could be more romantic than a pearling schooner in Timor Sea? From here, we sail across a lonely sea. No, we have not yet found our Neanderthal man. We have journeyed far among the Aborigines of the wastelands, but we found no sign of the man of 50,000 years ago. All we got was a rumor from the broken remnants of the tribes. So we must go further. We must go by sea, far along an unvisited coast where the white man is almost unknown. There we expect to find far more primitive tribes and types of unknown men, and if we are ever to find Neanderthal man, we'll probably find him somewhere on the edge of Timor Sea. Our voyage is to take us along 900 miles of the most inhospitable coast in the world. And the weather in these waters is of the blow-em-up, calm-em-down variety. Our little pearling schooner is a veteran of the vagaries of the South Sea storms. It doesn't care what happens. She isn't as roomy as an Atlantic liner, and it's hot as the hinges of Hades. If there's a hotter place on earth than this, you've got to show us. But we have plenty of beer. The folks in Broome insisted that we include several barrels in our cargo. For a while, we take a swim every day because our Abo sailor informs us that sharks never infest these waters. Then one day we inquire why, and he replies, "Too much crocodile." The currents are so swift and tricky that they make swirling, foaming rapids right in the open sea. One morning we sight this little isle, uncharted on our maps. Our Abo sailor says that he sees turtle tracks on the distant beach. The heat has spoiled a lot of our food, and we are looking forward to a turtle egg omelet and some terrapin soup. The entire island seems to have turned turtle. We rolled these babies over on their backs on our trip ashore last night, and now we're turning them over again so they can ramble into the ocean. And they make pretty good time, too, considering the heavy load of armor plate that they carry on their backs. They come ashore at night to lay their eggs in the sand. It's as difficult to find as a Neanderthal man. But old boy Abo, he follows the fin tracks. Then he jabs a stick into the sand, and then he sniffs, and then he digs them up. And the older they are, the better. He prefers his turtle fruit ripe. He prefers it so ripe that we all run the other way. Well, there are countless giant turtles out here, and nearly all of them are big enough for a man to ride on. And it's lucky for the Aborigines that the turtles are here, because in some sections of this coast, there is almost nothing else for the tribesmen to eat. In this one nest, our Abo finds exactly 106 eggs. Many a farmer wishes that his hens had a batting average like that. Well, at any rate, we won't starve along this coast. But it may be rather hard on the members of the expedition who don't care for eggs. Nearby in this same sandy incubator, we discover a nest of young turtles who have just emerged from their shells. Dr. Whittington tells us that scientists have never been able to determine how long it takes a turtle brood to hatch. Just another one of the mysteries of nature. And here at Sunday Island, we again approach what to us is an unknown region. What will we find here, we wonder? We were told that some particularly wild and primitive people live in this locality. Dropping over a small ridge, we come upon the capital city of Sunday Island. Only it isn't much of a city. The huts are about the size of dog kennels, built of leaves and twigs. But where are the people? Advancing a little farther, we see another group of huts. Yes, there are the tribesmen. They're doing a little broadcasting, a little fire signaling, just as Neanderthal man did thousands of years ago. This is the Sunday Island radio, and these boys are the local announcers. They're giving a special news broadcast of our arrival. Let's hope their news dispatch doesn't read something like this. Fellow citizens and cannibals, get your pots ready. Here come the missionaries. How did those men of 50,000 years ago kindle a blaze? How did Neanderthal man light his fire? Well, just like this. This boy is watching his father intently. In a few days, he is to pass officially from youth to manhood. Then he must be an expert at many things. And of course it is fundamental that he should know how to make fire after the manner of his forefathers. And now for one occupation that is unique to Australia, or almost unique. You will find it nowhere else in the world, with the possible exception of some of the more primitive peoples of southern India. Meet the boomerang maker of Sunday Island. Every Australian Aborigine is a boomerang maker and a boomerang thrower. Each man turns out his own curious weapon with the delicate precision of a modern rifle maker. Some of the best boomerangs are made of yari wood. To shape them properly, and at the same time to give them an iron-like temper, the wood is exposed to fire. This process so minimizes brittleness that the weapon can strike a tremendous blow without breaking. Isn't it curious how the Australian Aborigine learned to make this the oddest of all man's weapons? And after he makes it, he tests it against a light breeze. And it is not perfect unless it returns right to the feet of the thrower. These Aborigines are more primitive than any we've seen so far. Their weapons are the weapons of the Stone Age. Metals are unknown to them. This, for instance, is the local Krupp foundry. Instead of chromium steel, he uses a kangaroo shin bone and a piece of rock. He makes a spearhead from a fragment of quartz. And this makes us wonder. We wonder whether both he and the American Indian could have been taught this by a common ancestor in some dim, bygone age. Yes, surely we must be on the trail of Neanderthal man at last. At any rate, this is the way the caveman of 50,000 years ago made his spearhead. Yes, it's curious how time has stood still out here. Instead of the oxyacetylene torch for welding, this man uses mud and ant gum, a sticky clay, together with a kind of glue that he gets from giant ant hills. And so the spearhead is united to the shaft. And that's just as important to him as forging a 16-inch gun is to the civilized and warlike white man. He uses his primitive spear for war when Aborigine meets Aborigine, and also for hunting kangaroos and wallabies and the other strange creatures of his tropic realm. But how does he throw it far enough and straight enough to hit anything that isn't deaf, dumb, and blind? When we ask him this, he sends a boy for a notched throwing stick. They call that throwing stick a womera. The womera is to the spear what the gun barrel is to the bullet. And we hope he doesn't forget himself and swing that womera in our direction. It looks like mysterious business to us. We ask him to demonstrate a bit. He says, okay, and starts off with the spear between his toes. And then he heaves it. He heaves it at his pal Rumba Tumba out there, who fortunately knows when to duck. Now he's aiming at a tree. Yes, he's a Womera sharpshooter, all right. We're convinced. Then comes a sound that makes our blood run cold. 3 men approach. Each man twirls a curious gadget called a bull roarer. You can hear the unearthly hum for miles. At any rate, it's easy to see how the bull roarer gets its name. It's a warning to all women and children, a warning to remain away from the sacred rites. If they peek, their eyes are burned out with flaming brands. The women and children are driven away because they are not allowed to see the forbidden boomerang dance sacred to the dingo. Who's the dingo? Why, the dingo is the ferocious Australian wild dog. Every Aborigine has a dingo. The dingo dance sometimes lasts for 3 weeks. So no wonder they take it easy part of the time and do some of the dingo dance on their knees instead of on their dingoes. I mean their dogs or their feet, I should say. Then from out of the bush appear the gigolos of the tribe. They come to do the Timor Sea Tongo. Although the women have fled into the bush, This Aborigine shuffle is supposed to have a magical effect on them. The idea is long-distance sex appeal transmitted by shortwave movements. Notice the shortwave movements. The five-piece orchestra is made up of men so old that they can't even keep time with their own music. In our search for Neanderthal man, one of our most important studies is the study of faces. This is the Aborigine equivalent of a plug hat. It's made out of boomerang shavings of yari wood. And this old bird is wearing a flock of cockatoo feathers. And his friend Warragamba is adorned with a mother of pearl for a fig leaf, and crow feathers for a top knot. Dr. Withington passes out a few presents for us. We have been well treated by these people. They have been gentlemen toward us, and they expect us to be gentlemen in return. The men come first out here, then women and children last. Well, our camera is so bashful that we have to doll the boys and girls up a bit before they come within range of the lens. When they haven't any callers, they just trot around in their birthday clothes. What's the old boy on the right? The one with the long top knot. His wife is a trifle slow, so he heaves a rock at her. But Slowfoot Nell hasn't any pep. Among the Aborigines, the female of the species is called gin. Just gin. The boys out here not only like their gin, but they marry their gin. This is their dance of submission. These are the season's debutantes. The men are not kept away from the women's dance of submission. It's an old Ziegfelder-Toll custom. It may be their dance of submission, but this is one type of gin that doesn't appeal to the visiting white man. So far as we are concerned, these Abo beauties are at least 50,000 years behind their European and American sisters. Yes, indeed. But as we watch them, we can't help wondering what they would say if they could see our Western shimmy shake. We also study the faces of the women, hoping to find Miss Neanderthal. But we are not anxious to study them at close range. Nothing doing. Whether we find Miss Neanderthal or not, what we do find is a spiffy Mud Marcel. She's a young widow, the merry widow of the tribe. She cannot remarry until her hair grows to normal length and the mud falls off. These women are all under 30, and most of them are still in their early 20s. Yes, they seem to lose their fatal beauty rather early out here. This is the dance that brings howls of delight to the tired black businessman of Sunday Island. And I wonder what kind of howls it would bring from the boys in the bald-headed row if this chorus were put on the stage in London or New York. I am afraid they'd get the raspberry. But our Aboriginal debutantes have never even heard of New York or London. These boys might not be able to navigate a fleet of dreadnoughts through the Panama Canal, but just give them a few sticks for a raft, and they'll make the First Lord of the Admiralty look like a landlubber. Water seems to be their native element. They shoot these boiling rapids as casually as we would take a ride in a taxicab down Pennsylvania Avenue or along Piccadilly. Then when they reach a quieter stretch, they pull in for shore. They haven't any alpenstocks or spiked boots. Just watch them gallop up the cliffs. They climb like monkeys, probably just as our Neanderthal man did 50,000 years ago. The way they scramble over the rocks makes us feel that we may be on the right track after all. At night, we are awakened by a weird chant and the rattle of boomerangs. We learn that a boy is to be initiated into manhood in accordance with ancient tribal rites. Tomorrow, his initiation will bestow upon him the rank of a warrior, and the lad must face the harsh ordeal without a tremor. The final test will come at sunrise after this dance. Meanwhile, all through the night, dancing warriors wave magic branches and boomerangs. They do this in order to drive off the evil spirits. They believe that if even one evil spirit remains, it will weaken the lad so that he will be unable to endure the initiation. Symbolic gates signifying the coming of friendly spirits are waved back and forth by the painted warriors. The friendly spirits are the ancestors of the boy who is to become a man at dawn. There is no ceremony here in wild Australia more important than this of ushering a boy into the estate of manhood. After tomorrow, he will be a full-fledged boomerang thrower and kangaroo hunter, or he'll be an outcast.